Hi everybody, and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit Relationships, and it's by user Need This ASAP Please. I, 26 female, do not want my husband's 29 male sister, 33 female, to watch our child unsupervised. His family say I'm being overprotective. Need opinions. I have known my husband's family since I was 10. When I first met his older sister, Monica, I was told that she just had severe social anxiety. She never left the house and spent most days in her room. Through the years, she got worse, completely neglecting her personal hygiene and not interacting with anyone but her family members, and barely even them. When she started having what we would later come to know as schizophrenic episodes, my husband's mother was at a complete loss about what to do. Monica refused to see any kind of mental health professional. Eventually, she did something that allowed her mother to have her involuntary committed. She was in a psychiatric hospital for 2 years and is still doing outpatient therapy. Although she is medicated and in therapy, she still never leaves the house. She does the bare minimum when it comes to personal hygiene and will still sometimes say things that seem off to me. For example, we were driving down the highway once and she saw a billboard with a local government official asking people to get involved in our community. Wording was, "What will you do for your community?" And she said, "They keep putting up those where they think I'm going to be because he," referring to the government official, "really wants my help." Anyways, Monica loves kids. I won't deny that she's a great aunt. The only time that she seems truly happy is when she's playing with her nieces and nephews. My husband's siblings seem to have no problem allowing Monica to babysit their kid, and they often pay her to do it. This is the closest thing Monica has to a job. My husband's brother's wife once voiced some discomfort with Monica babysitting to me, but she'd rather not make waves in the family. I don't feel that way. Monica is still not mentally healthy and probably will never be. The thought of her having one of her episodes while alone with my son terrifies me. She still has a hard time being responsible for herself, let alone a 1-year-old child. I'm fine with Monica spending time with my son and having a relationship with him. The more love that he has in his life, the better. But I'm still extremely uncomfortable allowing her to babysit unsupervised. The other day, my husband was visiting at his mother's house, where Monica lives, with my son. At about midday, he calls me from the grocery store asking if I needed anything. I asked how my son was doing because, for some strange reason, he hates the grocery store more than anything else. Hubby told me that he'd left my son alone with Monica at home. I got really angry. Aside from the fact that I don't believe Monica is a safe caretaker, my husband had left my son alone with her when I'd expressly asked him not to until we could have a good discussion about it. I very calmly asked him to leave the grocery shopping until later and go back to my son. He told me that I was overreacting. I was at work so I couldn't do anything, and said we'd talk about it later. Honestly, I was kind of an anxious mess the rest of the day. My husband, meanwhile, called his mother to ask her opinion on the situation. She told him that I was being ridiculous and that it was extremely hurtful to both Monica and her that I was ignoring all of the progress Monica made in the past few years. She told my husband's siblings that I thought that Monica was crazy and didn't want her around my child, which is not true. I never said anything close to that. Now all of my husband's family is angry at me. Monica sent me a photo of her medicines with the caption, "See, I'm still on my crazy pills." Both my husband's brother and other sister have called me and told me to stop bullying Monica. The thing is, I don't think I'm bullying her. I think I'm being a responsible parent. If Monica was a stranger who I was interested in hiring as a nanny and she told me her mental health history, I wouldn't hire her in a million years. I don't think I should make an exception because it's family. I'm just looking for some options on the situation. Am I being unreasonable or is it my husband's family that's overreacting? Thanks in advance. Okay, OP, in your situation, I think you've got 2 problems. The first one, the one that you're concerned about, is I don't think you're being a bully or being mean to Monica or overlooking her progress or anything like that. I think you are being a rightfully concerned parent. I mean, we're talking about a 1-year-old child that needs constant supervision. So just for argument's sake, what would happen to Monica if she's babysitting your son and something bad happens to him? What would happen to her? How would she feel about that? That situation would probably not do her any good, and her progress might be hindered because of it. I think your husband's family is not overreacting, they're just being unreasonable. And the other problem that you apparently have missed is your husband. Not only did he unilaterally decide to leave your son with Monica, considering he knows that you're against it and you haven't reached a compromise on it, but he also went to talk to mommy, and then mommy got all crazy. You also have a mother-in-law problem, I'm sorry to say. There's a lot of problems here. I would have a serious discussion with your husband, because when it comes to parenting, you both need to be on the same page. That is a must. Or else your relationship will have issues, and hopefully they don't. Additionally, your husband needs to learn and understand that going to mommy for this type of thing is wrong. He doesn't need his mommy's approval on this. He's a parent. And what do you guys think OP should do in this situation? Let me know in the comment section, and now let's move on to the community comments to see what they said. Sandman42 says, "Hey there, social worker here weighing in. I've worked with hundreds of individuals diagnosed with schizophrenia from all different backgrounds, SESs, etc. A basic internet search will tell you that someone with a mental illness is more likely to be the victim of a violent crime rather than the perpetrator. However, someone with schizophrenia, even when they are on effective medication and engaged in their treatment, can still have a psychotic episode at any time. This does not mean that she will intentionally try and hurt your son, but she might. But she could also become fixated on a delusion or hear a voice while trying to care for your child. For example, she experiences an auditory hallucination commanding her to go outside, thus leaving your child unattended in the bathroom or wherever. While it's unlikely that she would intentionally harm him, she could very easily cause him to come to harm through neglect or distraction or fixation caused by a psychosis, auditory and/or visual hallucinations or delusions. In short, no, you are not overreacting at all. Schizophrenia is a very serious disability and should be treated as such." OMG, you can't be serious says, "Wow, I've lurked on this subreddit for years. I always knew there would be a day when I created an account just to comment. Looks like it's here. This is unbelievable. Putting the episodes and Monica's behavior aside, if only for one moment, because that's not the sort of thing that should get brushed over when it comes to watching infants, it is completely unacceptable your husband would A. disregard your parenting decision to not leave your son alone with Monica until you two could discuss it at length, and B. go ahead and involve his family. He made this situation much more offensive than it had to be for all involved. He's the one hurting Monica here. He needs a wake-up call. His number one priority in life has to be his new family, you and the baby. He probably feels protective of Monica, but it's not an excuse to throw you under the bus like that for looking out for your son. Not to mention, this could potentially provoke inappropriate behavior from Monica regarding you, or worse, your son. You seriously have to talk to your husband about this and get on the same page, stat. And OP responds, "I guess I'm just not sure how much I can tell my husband to side with me and not his family. He's extremely close to his mother and siblings, and I said in another comment, I don't know what's reasonable to ask of him and what's unreasonable and controlling behavior." Luida Egg says, "Maybe your in-laws and husband would be more receptive if you come at it from another angle. It's absolutely reasonable to fear for your baby's safety with Monica as a babysitter, but if they're not convinced, ask them questions about how much of a risk it is to her. What if there's a fire, a break-in? What if the baby has an unforeseeable medical emergency? Someone with mental health as fragile as Monica would not cope with that. Sure, the odds are low that something would happen, but no one ever expects those things to happen, and those things are the reason why it's standard to give a babysitter the numbers for the police, poison control, fire department, and so on. If something happened, Monica would very likely never recover. Put it to them that way." Additional information from OP's comments. "I've known the family since I was 10 and she was 17. I was there when everybody thought she was just shy, for when shy turned into social anxiety, for when she started having her episodes and was committed. Granted, I was young when her problems began, but by the time things really started going downhill, I was there and very informed about what was happening. And I love Monica. I think in my post I didn't make it clear that Monica and I have been close for years. That when I say she wouldn't talk to anyone but her family, I was included in that. And I know how smart and funny she is. And I remember being a little girl and scraping my knee and Monica picking me up and singing me some dumb song and giving me an ice pop even though I wasn't supposed to have one. My point is that it's not like I just met Monica 2 years ago and only know about her issues from secondhand stories. I know the family and the situation really well, and I love Monica like a sister, but even with knowing all of that, I still don't feel comfortable leaving my son alone with her. The really annoying part is, up until their mother told Monica I didn't want her to babysit my son unsupervised, she didn't know. I had always found a way to work around her babysitting alone without having to tell her why I don't want her to, and I feel absolutely terrible that she found out. When she sent me the message about being on her meds, I called her and left a very long voicemail. She wouldn't answer the phone, telling her how much I loved her and what a great aunt she is to my son. Monica can come and visit basically whenever she wants, and she's great about calling ahead and making sure it's a good time, which mother-in-law definitely isn't. Having her come around for an hour or two while I do housework or check email, organize my life is awesome, but I know that I'm there just in case. As for thinking long term, when my son is old enough to be able to use the phone and call me or my husband or 911, I will revisit and probably be much more okay with her babysitting unsupervised. I guess I'm just very worried about pitting my husband against his family. He's extremely close to his mother and siblings. I'm an only child, and so I've always felt like I don't really understand sibling bonds and don't want to be unnecessarily demanding or be the crazy controlling wife. As a side note, Monica's family definitely coddles her. Monica does not lift a finger and does nothing for herself financially or otherwise. The money she makes babysitting is her fun fund. Now, I haven't really said this to anyone out loud, but I believe that doesn't help her. Every few months, her mom sits her down and makes a timeline. She'll have her GED in X amount of time, a job in X amount of time, etc. But it always goes completely ignored until a few months later when it starts all over again. It really breaks my heart because Monica is extremely smart and could have gone to any college she wanted and have been anything she wanted to be. Additionally, her last full episode was more than 2 years ago, but as I said in my post, she'll still say things that seem very off sometimes. I'm not trying to discount the progress she made, but she is still not 100% healthy and probably never will be. She does babysit my in-laws' children regularly, but they are older than my son, old enough to be able to use the phone and call their parents if need be. She is clearly dedicated to taking care of herself, but I still can't help but be worried. As I said previously, I think that maybe when my son is older, I might change my mind or be more lenient. This is the closest that I've ever come to discussing Monica's issues with non-family members, and I still feel almost guilty about it. Alright, well I think the community came through with some pretty solid and very empathetic advice, and OP definitely gave us a lot more context into their situation. So now that we've got all of that, it's of course time to move on with the update to see what happened. Now this update was 3 weeks after the original post, so let's move on with that. Sorry it's taking so long to update, guys. First and foremost, thank you all for your comments and messages. I read them multiple times in the days following my post, and they gave me the strength to stand up for myself and my son. First, a quick clarification. My husband and I are not getting divorced, but we got very close and things got worse before they got better. You see, soon after I made the post, I left to go and stay at a hotel. I left this thread open on our home computer. He called me and told me that he realized he was in the wrong and how manipulative his mother was being. Then he said he had to come clean about a few things. We had a very long talk that night in which I learned. 1. At the end of last year, Monica stopped taking her meds for a period of time and had some very severe episodes. I was not informed because 2. His family's plan was that Monica would move in with my husband and me and be our live-in nanny. I did not mention in my first post that my husband and I make considerably more than the rest of his siblings. Evidently, they thought the solution to the Monica problem was to just offload her onto us. 3. Monica had been watching my son for quite a long time without my knowing. They figured that if she watched him a lot and then they told me afterward that she'd been looking after him, I'd realize there was nothing to be worried about and would be okay with it. 4. My husband knew and was actively encouraging this plan. And 5, he'd been secretly loaning money that I thought was going into our savings account to pay for Monica's care. If you're still reading at this point, you might be screaming, "Why are you back together?" at your computer screen. Please keep in mind that I have had weeks to process this information. I didn't talk to my husband for 4 days after I learned this. I contacted a divorce lawyer. I even looked at moving states. My husband then sent me a letter saying that he had told his family off. He was ignoring all of their calls. He realized what a miserable husband and father he was being. He had met with a therapist twice already. He actually had one from a while ago that he stopped seeing, so he made 2 emergency appointments. He wanted to go to marriage counseling and fix everything that he had broken. I realized that I owed it to myself and to my son to see if I could rebuild my trust in him. We haven't jumped back into being a happily married couple. Some days, I don't want to look at him, but I also love him and know that he was blinded by his family and his mother's manipulation and a very irrational wish that he could close his eyes and his sister would be okay again. He's basically going to therapy 4 days a week. He's almost completely cut out of his family, so I'm willing to give him a chance. So I agreed to give everything a shot on 2 conditions. 1, we would go to marriage counseling twice a week. 2, his family is not allowed to see me or my child. He can visit with them if he wants, but they are under no circumstances allowed to be anywhere near my son or my house. After only a few sessions of couples therapy and lots of individual therapy, my husband is starting to realize what toxic people most of his family members are. This has been helped by the fact that his mother and sister, not Monica, have proved to be completely crazy after we went very low contact with them. I have come home multiple times to find them sitting at my front door, waiting for me to come home. The first time I was with my son and just drove straight by and called my husband to deal with them. They wouldn't leave and he had to call the cops. The second time, my son was not with me, so I got out of the car and said that if they didn't leave my property, I'd call the cops. My mother-in-law proceeded to start screeching at me that I was separating her from her baby, referring to my son, not my husband, that I was making Monica's mental health deteriorate, that she was going to starve because my husband had stopped giving her money. My sister-in-law then chimed in that they had never liked me, my husband was only with me for the money, etc. I told him to leave once again or I'd call the cops. I then turned around to open the front door to my house and my sister-in-law yanked me back so hard I fell to the ground. Big mistake. This is when I did something that I probably shouldn't have done, but was the single most cathartic event of my life. I pepper sprayed her, probably more than was necessary. Sister-in-law hasn't come back and luckily hasn't tried to charge me with assault. There are many more things like that. In fact, I could probably write a small novel. Anyway, I just wanted to let you guys know what was happening. Once again, thanks for everything, especially to the people who PM'd me private stories. It meant so much to me that you were willing to share your experience, some of which might have been hard to write down, to give advice and support to a stranger on the internet. Internet hugs to all of you. Opie's edit. I don't think I did a good job originally of making it clear that Monica, my schizophrenic sister-in-law, and the sister-in-law who showed up at my house with my mother-in-law are 2 different people. They are both sisters of my husband. Monica has not made any attempts to contact me, at least not any serious or inappropriate ones. She's blocked on my phone and Facebook, and so hasn't tried to initiate contact another way. I also had outside cameras installed. I did it after the first time they showed up outside. I'm honestly terrified of them trying to break in and take my son. I've never heard of a grandmother refer to a grandchild as their baby. It's so odd. I think a little part of my husband hopes that his sister and mother, his other siblings have for the most part just left us alone or even come out on our side, will stop being crazy and realize they were wrong. I can understand that it's extremely hard for him to all of a sudden see this very ugly side of the woman who raised him. But your comments have made us do a bit more research into protective orders and we realized that I need to do this now. Luckily, we have security footage of the incident and also I write in a journal a lot so I have dates and times recorded for other instances. I am going to meet with my lawyer about getting this done. Well, OP, first thing I'm gonna say is, why would your sister-in-law charge you with assault? You should be charging her because she's the one that pulled you down. You were just defending yourself. Good job with the pepper spray too. Now, I can't say this is a happy update, at least not for me, but it is a somewhat positive one if your husband continues to go to therapy and continues to acknowledge that his mom is nuts. And I think it all depends on whether you can trust him again or not, but that's gonna be up to you. So on that note, all the best to all of you, OP, and take care. Thank you for sharing. Now, let's move on to the mood booster post. This post is from the argument Petty Revenge, and it's by user Cortanium1342, car seat argument. I got into an argument with my husband this morning regarding car seat safety. Blew up into a big argument about properly strapping in, etc. He blew up and said, "What are you, a CPST, certified in car seat safety? You just know everything now. Where's your degree or certification to be spouting all this?" I immediately went and registered for a CPST certification course and paid the $95. Doing the online training right now and have to do a 3-day in-person course. This time next month, I will have my certification and then I'm gonna happily bring this argument up again, just to prove a point. Grinning face with sweat. Well, OP, I don't know if it's petty revenge just yet, but I know it's gonna feel damn satisfying to tell him, yeah, I'm certified. How about you? Thanks for sharing, OP, and all the best in the training. And it's that time that we've reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I really did enjoy reading them to you. So if you did, then don't be shy and go ahead and give the video a like. And don't forget to subscribe or even share this video with people that you might think will enjoy my storytelling. Also, if you have the time, go down to the video description and check out all the links I have for you, from our Discord community to my channel merch. And finally, I'd like to say thank you for watching. It really means a lot to me that you enjoy my videos. And having said all that, I'll see you guys in the next video.